Okay, let's dive into a story that honestly sounds like it's ripped straight from a Hollywood script.
Right.
You've got this massive $400 million lawsuit, big names involved, Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, Justin Baldoni. And a judge just dropped a pretty significant decision. It could really change things.
It's kind of striking, isn't it, how fast these things can blow up, collaborators on a film set.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's this huge, public, very expensive legal fight, especially with stars this big.
Absolutely. So for this deep dive, we're basically using a recent CNN article as our guide.
Okay.
Our mission, if you will, is to kind of cut through the noise, lay out the timeline, figure out what each side was actually claiming, and importantly, what this judge's ruling really means now. It all seems to stem from this one film project, It Ends With Us, where things clearly went sideways behind the scenes.
That's the core of it. And the big news we're really digging into today is that ruling from this week.
Right.
The judge basically dismissed Baldoni's main defamation lawsuit against Lively and Reynolds, and also tossed out his separate libel suit against the New York Times. That's a pretty major turn.
Definitely. So let's maybe set the scene first. Who are the main players here?
Okay.
We've got Justin Baldoni. People know him from acting, directing.
Jane the Virgin directing. Yeah.
Blake Lively, obviously a huge star. And her husband, Ryan Reynolds. And the article's super clear. This whole legal mess comes directly from that film It Ends With Us. Baldoni directed it, and he also starred opposite Lively.
And, on film sets, the creative side and the personal dynamics, they get really tangled up.
Sure.
But in this case, it seems like it just spiraled way out of control into these allegations of misconduct, and then, boom, lawsuits.
Okay, so timeline-wise, the reporting says things really kicked off back in December 2024.
Right.
That's when Blake Lively first filed something called a civil rights complaint.
Yeah, and the allegations in that complaint were, well, pretty serious. She was claiming sexual harassment by Baldoni during the filming.
Wow.
And she also claimed that when she tried to speak up about this alleged mistreatment, she faced retaliation.
Okay, and Baldoni's reaction?
He immediately denied it. Flat-out denial of her claims.
But that initial complaint, that wasn't the end of it. Lively then escalated things.
She did. She turned that civil rights complaint into an actual lawsuit against Baldoni.
And did the claims change in the lawsuit?
It seemed to expand, yeah. She alleged that after the alleged harassment and what she called inappropriate behavior on set, Baldoni's team basically orchestrated this smear campaign, that was her term, to wreck her reputation.
A smear campaign. And the article mentions some specifics.
It does. This is pretty striking. Her complaint apparently included hundreds of text messages, hundreds, between Baldoni and his crisis PR team.
Whoa. Okay, that's specific.
Very specific. And there was one particular text mentioned in the source where someone allegedly wrote they could bury her.
Bury her. Yikes.
Yeah. I mean, if that's accurate, as alleged in her filing, it suggests some pretty coordinated stuff happening on Baldoni's side. At least that's the picture Lively's lawsuit painted. Shows how bitter it got really fast.
Okay, so Lively files her lawsuit, includes these really damaging details, like the texts. What happens next?
Well, the source describes it as a bitter and public back and forth between the legal teams.
Not surprising, I guess.
No. And it wasn't just happening in court documents either. It's filled out publicly. There were some interesting legal moves.
Like what?
Well, the article mentions that Baldoni's lawyers, at one point, actually subpoenaed Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift. Seriously, in this case.
Yep. Superstar Taylor Swift, as the article puts it. Now, the source does say that subpoena was later withdrawn.
Okay, but still. Wow.
But it shows how wide they were casting the net, maybe, or just the kind of attention-grabbing tactics involved.
Yeah, definitely got attention. What else were they doing publicly?
Baldoni's team also apparently launched a whole public website.
A web?
Yeah, with documents about the case, their own timeline of relevant events. So clearly they were fighting this in the court of public opinion too, not just, actual court.
Right, trying to control the narrative.
Exactly. And look, Baldoni wasn't just defending himself for doing PR. He went on your tack with his own lawsuits, big ones.
Okay.
In January 2025, he files this massive $400 million defamation lawsuit directly against Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds.
$400 million? That's staggering. What was the core claim in that suit?
His argument basically was that the couple, Lively and Reynolds, were actively trying to destroy him and his career.
Destroy him.
Yeah, and he claimed they had, quote, hijacked his film, It Ends With Us. So defamation, claiming they made false statements that tanked his reputation. That was the gist.
Okay, so that's one huge lawsuit.
But he wasn't done. He filed another one, a $250 million libel suit against the New York Times.
Against the Times. Why? What's libel again?
Libel is basically written defamation, publish false statements that harm reputation.
Gotcha. So what was his beef with the newspaper?
He claimed an article they published was, his words, rife with inaccuracies, misrepresentations, and omissions.
Okay.
And he claimed the article unfairly relied on Lively's side of the story, what he called her self-sorting narrative. Essentially, he was saying the Times amplified damaging falsehoods about him.
Which really highlights that whole issue of how media covers these things, right? The framing and potential impact.
Absolutely. It's a whole other layer to these disputes.
Okay, so let's recap. We've got Lively's initial complaint, then her lawsuit with the text message stuff. Baldoni denies everything. Things get nasty publicly, Taylor Swift subpoena, websites.
Right.
Then Baldoni hits back with two massive lawsuits. $400 million defamation against Lively and Reynolds, $250 million libel against the New York Times.
Yep, that sets the stage.
Which brings us right up to this week's big news, the judge's ruling.
Exactly.
June 9th, 2025. The judge hands down this really critical decision. The CNN article says the judge dismissed Justin Baldoni's $400 million defamation lawsuit against Hollywood power couple Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds.
Just dismissed it, flat out.
Seems like it, for that specific claim as filed.
Yeah.
And the dismissal wasn't just for Lively and Reynolds. According to the source, their publicist, Leslie Sloan, had also filed a motion to dismiss, and the judge granted that too.
Okay, and what about the other lawsuit, the one against the New York Times?
That got dismissed too. The judge also granted a motion to dismiss by the New York Times in that $250 million libel suit.
Wow. So based on this ruling, both of Baldoni's huge counter lawsuits, the defamation claim, the libel claim, they've been thrown out by the judge at this point?
For those specific claims, yes. That seems to be the outcome. It's a pretty decisive ruling on those particular legal arguments.
I bet Lively's team had something to say about that.
Oh, yeah. The source quotes her lawyers, Ezra Hudson and Mike Gottlieb. They called the ruling a total victory and a complete vindication for their clients.
Strong words.
And they didn't mince words in their statement either. It's quoted in the article. As we have said from day one, this $400 million lawsuit was a sham, and the court saw right through it.
Oof, a sham. Okay, so they feel pretty strongly that the defamation claim had no merit.
That's certainly the message they're sending. But, and this is important.
There's a but.
There's a but. It gets a bit more nuanced here. While the judge dismissed those big defamation and libel claims as they were presented, the ruling did give Baldoni an opening.
How so?
The judge specifically said Baldoni can file an amended complaint by June 23rd.
Amended, meaning he gets another shot.
Sort of. It means he has a chance to refine or restate certain claims, potentially under different legal theories, based on what the judge might allow. They have to meet specific legal standards, basically.
Ah, okay. So it's not like everything is dead in the water for him. Does the article say what kind of claims he might be able to amend?
It does. It highlights two specific areas. One is tortious interference with contract, relating to Reynolds and Lively. Tortious interference. Sounds complicated.
It basically means improperly messing with someone else's business contract or relationship.
Okay. And the other?
The other is breach of implied covenant relating to Lively.
Implied covenant, like an unspoken agreement.
Sort of, yeah. It's about the idea that parties to a contract have an implicit duty of good faith and fair dealing with each other. So maybe related to their working relationship on the film.
Interesting. So the judge threw out the big, broad defamation libel stuff.
Right. Seemed to find no basis for those, as argued.
But left the door slightly ajar for claims focused more specifically on, like, business interference or breaking unspoken rules within their contract.
That seems to be the implication. It suggests the court might be willing to hear arguments about specific contractual or business issues if Baldoni's team can properly formulate those claims by the deadline. It's different from just saying they ruined my reputation with lies.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Did Baldoni's side or the Times comment on the ruling?
The article says CNN reached out to their reps, but no comment was included in the source material we have.
Okay.
And it also notes, this is a developing story and will be updated, which makes sense with that June 23rd deadline hanging out there.
Right. So what's a big takeaway for you, the listener, from all this?
Well, I think this case is just a really vivid example of how intense these legal fights can get in the entertainment world. Super complex, super public.
Yeah, And this ruling is a major development. For now, the judge has basically said no to Baldoni's main claims, the huge defamation suit against the couple, the libel suit against the Times.
Yeah.
Those specific arguments didn't hold up, at least not yet.
And those details we mentioned, the alleged texts about burying someone, the Taylor Swift subpoena moment, they just really underscore the drama, right? And the very public way these things play out. It's not just dry legal filings.
Absolutely. It involves reputations, huge amounts of money, famous people, all under a massive spotlight.
But as we said, even with these big dismissals, the story might not be over.
Which leads us perfectly into that final thought for you to chew on. The judge specifically said Baldoni can try again by June 23rd with amended claims for things like tortious interference with contract and breach of implied covenant.
Right.
So think about that. What could those claims actually look like in the context of making a film like It Ends With Us? What kind of alleged business interference or broken implicit promises might be argued? Could that be the next chapter here? Maybe a less headline-grabbing but still significant legal battle?
And what happens if those amended complaints do get filed by that deadline? It's definitely a situation with moving parts, even after this week's major decision. Still one to watch.